is Nick Douglas for Adventures of a Sailor Girl. We're at the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, and I have with me Lindsay May, who is the navigator on board the beautiful SNS Kialoa 2. What a beautiful yacht to go south on.
She is a beautiful boat and very comfortable, and of course we're spoiled. I do miss the really fast, lightweight flyers, but this is a great opportunity with a great bunch of guys. We've got a lot of ex-Brindabella and Love and War people and some very experienced sailors around the world, America's Cup. So she's just a great boat to sail on, and it's an honour to be on such an old boat.
Absolutely, and I love how you just dropped out, Brindabella, Love and War, very well-known boats in the Sydney Hobart. But you're also a very well-known sailor yourself. This is your 46th, I believe?
This will be 46 if I'm okay on Boxing Day. Yep.
Fingers crossed?
Oh, absolutely. I've been well the last 45, so I don't want to change that.
No, and it's in a row too, which is pretty amazing.
Yes, I just people ask, how come you've done 45? I just say I've been well on Boxing Day, because there are guys we know over the years that have not been able to make it. Something's happened medically, come the day. So I don't know anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know anything else either, but I haven't actually done the race. I just follow all of you lovely heroes. But the fact that you've managed to do 45 in a row with health is number one, most important, but then with no breakages, no retirements.
Oh, I've had retirements.
You've had a retirement.
I've had about 8, I think, over the.
I was thinking this is abnormal.
Over the years, I've been a few broken masts, a few bent masts, fractured hulls, delamination. We've never retired from conditions, and I don't say that proudly, but there's probably some we probably should have. Like 84, you just went on in 84 and we won that race on Indian Pacific. But it's, it happens. If you look across the fleet, the retirement rate's about 20%. I did some stats on it a little while ago, and whilst, some years it's really high, it's about 18 to 20%.
Fantastic. I would love to pick what is in your brain. I'm just starting to see the wealth of knowledge that's in there. So this would potentially be your 46th start. How many races have you completed and how many have you won? It sounds like there's a few in there.
Well, I think I've completed 38, I think it is. And as far as winning, I've been really fortunate. I was the navigator on Indian Pacific in 84. I was a navigator on Atara in 1991, and we won the Southern Cross Cup for Ireland in that race. And then I was the skipper navigator on Love and War in 2006. And then in 97, I was navigator on Brindabella when we took line honours. And the sad thing on Brindabella was that we were second many times. What used to happen is some boat from Europe had come down, a gun boat like Sayonara, Tasmania, which was formerly New Zealand. And look, any sailor that's done pretty well but didn't take home the silverware was always in a race-winning position when something disastrous happened. They'll go, oh yeah, we had it all shot to pieces until something happened. And that's one of the things about this race, is the until, is the luck factor. Yes, as Jack Gibson said, good teams always have good luck. But what you're doing sailing out there in those conditions, across a wide body of water, boats get separated and you can be just 5-10 miles apart and in slightly different conditions for a few hours. It just gives you that little edge. And that happens in the line honours boats. We see it happen and they go, oh, the navigator picked a track and they went round someone. Well, the fact is that the boat in front was probably in a hole. So you say, well, let's not go there, we'll go around, and then you're looking famous. But on the handicap side of things, there's been margins that have been minor. I haven't really gone into it in depth, but I think one year, 91, I think we won by a minute 27. Wow. So, you just try and make sure that every little possible advantage is had. And you also get that by being well organised. And you need a really good crew, experienced crew, and you just need people that are going to push that boat all the time. You have to push the boat all the time. And that was one of the big things on Brindabella. We used to do incredibly well at night. We just had guys that just kept that boat going all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, I know there's a lot of sailors when you grow up sailing dinghies and they're like, gosh, you do well downwind. And I'm like, no, I just don't rest when I get to the top mark. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what happens, is that people do rest. And so the other thing also on boats is that there's a lot of really good sailors who suffer from seasickness. And so you get people that are Olympians in the day races and sailing on the harbours and lakes and so forth. And then they go to Hobart. So any time that we have a bash the first night, I sort of relish that, and I say to guys in the crew, don't worry about it. So-and-so's on this boat and so-and-so's on that boat. He'll be spewing his guts up right now, and he won't be steering the boat. The boat, and of course the next morning they're not in the sort of position that they should be in. And so the thing that I've always tried to do over the years is to get crew that can go to sea, and it's tough sometimes. You've got to say to people, I'm sorry, mate, you can't come because you're prone to seasickness, and some people just can't shake it. And their solution is the only solution that works, and that is go and sit under a tree for half an hour.
You can't do that when you're at sea.
No. And they don't think it's very funny when you suggest that's what you should be doing. So just go and take a dog for a walk and sit under the tree. So seasickness is a real inhibitor to a boat's capability of sailing well, and so therefore you will find on those top crews, probably there's nobody getting seasick.
Or they're really good at medicating themselves.
Yeah, well, the medication, I don't know how well it works. Many, many years ago, they brought out this SCOP, which was the patch that you put behind your ear, and I think it was the late 80s or something or other, or 70s. Anyway, they were handing it out here at the briefing, and I thought, I'll give it a whirl. So I put the patch on behind my ear, and I didn't feel sick, and I was all fine and so forth. And when I got to Hobart, I was putting my wet weather gear away, and the patch was stuck on the collar of my wet weather gear. It had come off. So whether it worked, I don't know, but I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
But what I do is I do take medication if need be. And again, one of the things on Brindabella, the guys used to come to me and say, Linz, the weather's going to go bad, pass the travel calm around. And we would pass the travel calm around and give everybody, a tablet, and it would sort of settle them down. You perform.
No wonder the mainstream world thinks that we're mental. What person in their right mind would go out on Boxing Day willingly to take on a southerly and medicate themselves accordingly?
Well, it is legal, I think.
It's fine. It's totally fine. But you mentioned 1997 with Brindabella. That's quite a personal one for me. Brindabella's the first yacht I remember. But then you also did the 1998 Hobart with Brindabella, and of course it's 20 years since that awful race. Do you want to tell me about the conditions?
Yeah, well, 98 on Brindabella, we didn't really get the worst of it. So we were 130 miles or so further south of where it all went pear-shaped. And we were protected to a degree by the landmass of Tassie from the southwesterly swell. So whilst we had 70 knot winds or thereabouts.
Is that all?
Yeah, we didn't have the seaway. Yeah. So what we need to bear in mind then is that when that weather forecast came through on the 27th and forecast winds of 60 knots, back then, they did say they did it, but nobody knew that it was plus or minus 40%.
Yeah.
So 6.4 is 24.84, and there are some boats that did record 84 knots. Now, then you had that seaway, so we had a current, we had a very strong southerly flowing current against a 70, 80 knot southwesterly wind, so those huge seas that I only saw on the helicopter and the TV shots built up. And so you had conditions that were just chaotic there. And then the conundrum for boats was, well, do we continue on or do we go home? Now, the prudent people say we go home. But in going home, they essentially stayed in the system, in the wave system and the weather system, because it was also going out to the northeast a bit. And boats were then rolled. You get a big sea, gets in behind you, lifts us up the stern, and the boats were rolled. People go over the side. Mast break. And the other thing we had in 98 was that decks weren't as strong as they are now. So decks peeled off, and there was a classic photograph of one crew with the deck, it's like they were sitting in a can up to their waists in water just awaiting rescue. And that was the other amazing thing, was that the rescue assets that came into play that year, if that had happened, maybe 10 years earlier, we wouldn't have had that. It was phenomenal what was done by those...
I think I just turned my camera off. Give me 1 second. Sorry. No, it's still going. Keep going. It was phenomenal.
So it was phenomenal what was done by those rescue assets. And, we don't go out expecting that that's going to happen and that we just, we're in strife, so come and rescue us. So that's not the way you go about it. But just extenuating circumstances. And then, of course, the tragedy was that 6 people lost their lives. If it hadn't been for all of those rescue services, who knows, 20, 30, 40. There was something like 30 or 40 people reported missing. And when we got to Hobart, we finished early on the 28th. and sayonara beat us, and that's the classic one where Larry Ellison is interviewed, and somebody says, "And Mr. Ellison, will you do this race again?" And he looks at the camera and he says, "Not if I live to be 1,000 will I ever do this race again." And he was gone on his jet to Hamilton Island within the hour. He wasn't there when we finished.
And he didn't get the worst of it either.
No, he didn't. But the boat was breaking up. And they had guys, experienced guys, Chris Dixon and round the world sailors and everything else. And so we all went to the pub. So yes, the media came on and said, and when somebody said, do you know there's 40 people missing? We'd lost our high frequency radio. We didn't have a radio. And I had a little broadcast radio that ended up in the bilge, and it cooked itself. So we had no idea of knowing what was going on until the media came in and started, and everybody was absolutely shocked, of course. And then we went to the pub, and the 11 o'clock news came on, and there on the TV, everybody's having a drink, and then all of a sudden the place just went absolutely quiet. Looking at those pictures of the guys on the end of the the tea bag, as they call it, being dipped in and pulling people out of the water. So, and one of our crew, sadly, he lost his uncle in that race, and we knew he was missing at that stage, and we didn't really know until sort of a day later, basically, that what had happened there. So, we learned a lot. I don't believe the race would ever proceed if conditions like that were going to come. We're looking like they were on their way. And what has happened as a result of the CYC's instigation, the coronial inquiry, has been done here for safety to look after us and to try and prevent those circumstances happening are significant, and they exceed what's happened anywhere else around the world. The world, a lot of places I've sailed in most of the major races, and to my opinion, they all haven't fully learned from what happened here in '98.
But I know it's awful, but like you say, the good that comes out of the bad, and regardless of everything bad that's happened, and Larry Ellis would never do this race again, you're still here and you're still going to be there on Boxing Day.
Yeah, well, Boxing Day, I just can't think what it must be like to go herds of people in a shop to go and try and get
It's not my style either.
cheap stuff. Now, what I've learned is what you can do is if you want to get special stuff, you go there and you say, look, I can't be here on Boxing Day, and they'll say, why is that? And I say, well, I'm going to Hobart. Are you right? Well, we'll give you the Boxing Day price. So there's a tip. There's a tip.
It's the tip. Well, given that I probably won't show this until Boxing Day, everyone's going to have to use this tip next year. But you heard it here first. Lindsay May says if you're going to Hobart, you can still get your Boxing Day prices on what?
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve,
yeah, because you can't be there Boxing Day.
You're a glamour. So nice to meet you. Good luck on your 46th start, and hopefully I'll see you in Hobart.
Okay, yeah, sure. We'll get there.